topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday morning, and it's great to be here with you all. So, it's been quite a rough month for me. A lot of, oral pain. I'm sure you all have gone through it too. Some, oral surgery and a lot of things happening. And you might be thinking, why am I bringing that up? So what I want to share with you is that while I was kind of going through that, and there was this wonderful dental assistant and the dentist, contrary to, I know most of us don't like going to the dentist, very kind and very nice. So the idea is that, it's not just you can be kind while going out of the way, you can be kind while doing your job and bringing that kindness over there. So thank you to everyone for those who have got our books, and especially Expert to Influencer and the Entrepreneur's Garden. And I'm excited. Yes, I'm excited to share. I finished my first draft of the Artificial Intelligence Playbook. So it's around 90,000 words plus, but super excited. It's gone to the editors. It took me quite a bit of time. I started last year and it's today. So just super excited about that. And if you haven't got our books, just remember, to get our books, because they will make a difference in your life. And also they'll make a difference in an entrepreneur across the globe, because here's what I'll share with you. We share the profits from the book with kiva.org. So help us help the entrepreneurs. Let's bring in our guest. Welcome, Mike.
Hi there, Divya. How are you?
Good. How are you? Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. So, Mike, do you recall a moment when somebody left a positive mark on you, or, an event that happened in your life that stands out today as a positive, memorable moment?
Certainly, yeah, there's quite a few, but I think one of the most memorable moments was being mentored and coached for a year by a very senior executive in one of the previous companies I've worked in. And just watching him for a year and taking his guidance has really shaped my own career. So anytime I look back at what I've achieved, I look back at that particular moment, which was really special for me.
And so many times we underplay the influence of our just being present. And you are saying that, just watching someone, shadowing them has guided your life. So tell us, I'm sure, you come across this, and, we all have that self-doubt and all that. So how did you get into the arena of the doubts area?
Yeah, it really, one of the things I recognize, particularly as I was in my early career as a manager and a senior manager, I always recognized these moments of fear and anxiety I had when it either came to presenting at a meeting or speaking to a senior leader. I was selected by the company at the time. I used to work for HP, and I was selected on what was known as their accelerated development program for high potential performers. And it's a year-long program that provides all types of coaching and everything, which is that previous coach I mentioned came through that program. But the very first week when we had the orientation, we had dinner in the evening, and I found myself sitting next to the company's group CEO. He was also the chairman and the president of the company. And I found myself very fast shrinking in my seat, not knowing what to say, wondering why I was there. I was doubting myself, looking for things to say with these messages in my mind saying, be careful what you say because you may get found out being a fraud. You know, you don't belong here. All of these self-limiting beliefs were racing through my mind and causing me a lot of anxiety during, it was probably about a 90-minute dinner session. And it was probably the most significant imposter syndrome moment in my life, which really led me on to, I need to do something about this. I need to figure out how to overcome some of these fears. So that was probably the real start. But then it took me a number of years to really start to change how I am as a person.
Yeah, no. And here's the thing. I don't think so anybody's untouched. I know I go through that even now sometimes. Like most of the times, you are at ease and you know how to relate to it. And there will be something. So I'll just give a quick example. While I was writing this previous, like, current book, which is in the draft format, so many times, like, I would literally scrap my chapter and drop it like, I don't think so it fits here. I know, like, I have written 14, 15 books and they've done really good best-selling books. And yet, every time I write a book, it's a piece of you that you're putting out there. And whether you're writing a book or whether you're sitting with the CEO or presenting, and it's almost like there's something that holds us back. And the key is, so of course, I have learned to deal with it in my own way. So tell us, like, how did you deal in that moment? And what could somebody do as soon as that gremlin raises its head?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think we are our own worst enemies when it comes to self-criticism. It's always a difficult thing to get over. And I had to do a number of different things. So I went on a speaking course. It was actually a Dale Carnegie speaking program that I went on. It was for 8 weeks. That was really interesting. But one of the main things that I did was I purposely tried to put myself outside of my comfort zone as often as I possibly could. So if it came to doing a presentation in front of a large audience, I would put myself up for it. And it's about putting yourself outside your comfort zone, and that brings you straight into a fear zone anyway. So it's how you deal with that when you're in that fear zone. And if you can push through the fear zone, you get into a learning and a growth zone. If you can't, you easily retreat back into your comfort zone where everything is, what you're familiar with. So there was a number of different things that I could do over the years. But, for anybody else who are doubting themselves or limiting their beliefs, they just need to think about, well, what are the things that you've achieved? It's almost like looking at your confidence bank. It's coming up with a number of things that you have been successful at in the past and you have achieved, and then keep telling yourself with positive affirmations that you can do this, you've got this, you've done these things in the past. So have that confidence to push forward.
Absolutely. That's such a good point that you mentioned, and exposure therapy that has been known to it's we all have fears,
Yeah.
and folks, if you don't have it, kudos to you, you're blessed. But I haven't come across anyone, like, I still remember reading, like, so many, I forget who it was Angela Merkel, Germany's chancellor, that I had read something about her. She said that, like, even after being the chancellor, like twice or thrice, that whenever she went, she over prepared. So we all have that. That's basically,
Mhm.
so one thing, like, a lot of people think that, oh, how could I have this self-doubt, or how could I have this limiting belief? So can you share, like, how can we let our audience know that it is very normal to feel and it's
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And just coming back to what you said earlier on, I mean, absolutely everybody at some time in their life will have imposter syndrome, and some will get it quite regularly, and it just depends on, the situation you find yourself in. Normally, when it's in unfamiliar territory that you find yourself in, that's when this comes up. But the way to get through it is to just have these self affirmations. Just say to yourself, why you're there. Like if you're at a meeting, for example, rather than questioning, do you belong there? Just say, I know I belong there because there is value that I know I'm bringing. When I was on this accelerated development program, I was chosen on merit because of my previous performances.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say to myself, look, I deserve to be here. And I've proved it through performance. People are recognizing that performance. Um, so for anybody who is out there, you have to look at those things that, look at where your strengths are and where you have things that you need to improve on. Don't just say, I can't do this, or don't say, this is not for me. It could be, I can't do this yet, or just set yourself some small goals that will help you to get to where you need to. So if you're trying to learn a new skill, for example, that you don't have in place yet, just through practice and determination, you can get there. And it goes for anything, any situation. You can learn how to develop that strength within you, and it might be just an internal strength that you're looking for. It might be a physical skill, but with practice and determination and the power of positive thought, having that what's known as a growth mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that will really, believe it or not, that will get you to where you need to get to.
Absolutely. So some of our audience may be thinking like, I've heard about self-doubt, but maybe they're listening about the imposter syndrome for the first time. So can you tell, like, sometimes what happens is that that little angst before speaking is good because, it keeps you alert. But how can they tell the difference if they do have the imposter syndrome or if they don't?
Well, certainly imposter syndrome will, you can tell if you've got imposter syndrome because you start to already question whether you can do something or not. You start to add these self-limiting beliefs that,
Mhm.
oh, I don't feel ready, or I don't feel like I'm good enough. And you end up doing things like comparing yourself to other people who you may view as somebody who is a lot more capable than you are. So you're doing all of these things, you're comparing yourself to others, you're limiting your own beliefs. That's really imposter syndrome really playing out in its strongest way. So someone who does not have imposter syndrome, and I do add that everybody has at some stage, even the most successful CEOs and sportsmen of the world have it. um, it's just about really looking, as I mentioned earlier on, at the things that you have achieved in the past, or just having that growth mindset that says, every opportunity is a learning and a growth opportunity for you. So you can get better at something until, it becomes almost normal behavior for you.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I want to go back to what you had said that you felt like a fraud. And that, like, they feel like a fake. They feel like I'm not good enough. So these are like, the key things also to know, like, besides what you have showed,
Mm.
that you are experiencing imposter syndrome to some extent. And one thing is to like also to know that it's completely okay, like you said, that CEOs are experiencing. And so many times what happens is that when people receive compliments, it's almost like, oh, you know what, fine, I'm getting this positive comment, but next time I might get found out, and they're not taking that compliment. What could they do in that moment?
I would say take that compliment and celebrate it.
Mhm.
Also make a note of it, because the more compliments that you receive, the more moments of recognition and praise that you receive are really helping you to increase your confidence. Now, many people may get praise and confidence and things like that, and then forget about it and move on. And then they completely forget about those things because they're only looking at the here and now. But it's always good to look back at the things that you have done, the praise that you have received, the recognition that you've received in the past. It's almost like building that up as I would call it a brag file or a confidence bank to always help you moving forward. These little things will make such a significant difference. And coming back to you saying earlier on about the imposter syndrome that everybody gets, sometimes that starts as early as childhood. It starts maybe at school. If your homework was wrong and you had a big red F put across it. Some of these things do, I guess, affect people for quite some time, or being told you can't have something by your parents. It's almost like we're brought up in a world that really does not accept failure, although everybody
Mm,
fails, right?
mm,
But
mm.
failure is almost something that you cannot do. It's wrong. But you can learn from failure. Failure is not the opposite of success, is one of the things I always say. It's actually a prerequisite of success. It is that point when you've failed at doing something is a learning opportunity for you to look at, okay, well, I failed this time. What can I do differently for next time to be successful next time? And everybody goes for it. Sports people go for it, learning to maybe throw a football or take a penalty or whatever it might be, until they get really good at it. It's about practice as well.
Absolutely. I really like the way you put it. Failure is a prerequisite of success. So we've talked about at the individual level. Then you also mentioned about, you were selected for the
Hmm.
high accelerated performance. So let's look at it from a leader's perspective, from a manager's perspective.
Yeah.
And it could be a parent, it could be a coach, it could be anyone. What can people do so that I'm not saying that they're responsible for anybody else's confidence, but what kind of environment we can create as a society, regardless? And if you have a couple
Yeah.
of examples in the managers or other of your clients, that would be great. But you're creative, like,
Mm.
safe space where you are able to give that feedback, but it is given in a way that you're not ripping a person apart.
Absolutely. I mean, as a leader, and I've been a leader managing people for many years in my career. Giving feedback is important for sure, because if you don't give any feedback at all, then the individual may not know whether they're doing good or whether they're doing bad. But it's
Mhm.
also how you give the feedback, and if it's really negative, make sure that that is also backed up with some of the positive things the individual has done, so that they'll feel, right, well, I can see the things that I'm good at, and now I know some of the things I've still got to improve on. But you're right, as a leader, you've got to create that safe space where people can be open and honest. But as a leader, you have to have a level of what I call emotional intelligence. You have to be empathetic with the individual. Everybody is different. You may have 5 people in your team all doing the same job, but all doing it differently. They have a different approach to how they solve a problem. Some may take longer than others. Some people have neuro differences, for example, which may have an impact on how they work and the conditions that they work in. So as a leader, you have to really get to know each individual and not just treat them like they're a number in your organization. Get to know their backgrounds, who they are, where their strengths are, where they need to improve, where's the best place for you to position them in your organization that will maximize productivity. So all of these things will, are what I say good leaders should be doing, because there's a lot, unfortunately, that don't. But I think as well, having what I call a continuous learning mindset is also very, very key to anybody. There's a lot of people that may come out of college and university and think, wow, 4 or 5 years in education, I'm done with it now. But to be honest, that's only the beginning. It's only the beginning. And
Yes,
you just have to keep learning and moving forward. And that's how you can remain, more confident in your own abilities and have that growth mindset, as opposed to having what's known as a fixed mindset.
absolutely. Learning never stops.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you have a couple of experiences from your personal leadership, whether you were either on the receiving end or on the giving end of a good constructive feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I can do both. I can take you back to a story when I used to work for HP as a manager, and we were going through this huge change with our call centers, and one of my managers who reported to me was running that particular project, and she had said, like, we're ready, to go live, and I said, right, have you checked everything and done everything you've needed to do? And it was all, yep, we're confident, we're good to go. I flicked the switch and, turned on that new system, and it fell down immediately, causing so many issues with customers not being able to get through, and having, a major impact to, customers and their equipment not being fixed. I had, from my own peers, people having a go at me because it had gone wrong, and it affected their client base
Right.
without them even understanding what
Mm,
went wrong and why it went wrong. It was just my fault. You're the responsible person for screwing everything up. Okay. I took that on the chin. The individual was, distraught. She was really concerned. And I said to her, listen, this is a learning experience. Don't worry. What we need to do as quickly as possible is get this fixed and turned around. That's the most important thing first. We can talk about everything afterwards. But I said to her, listen, I trust you, and I trust we'll get this right. And just simple words like that can make a significant difference to an individual. It could be the difference between breaking someone's career or breaking their confidence completely, to giving them hope, knowing that, it's a learning opportunity. They'll get it right next time. She turned out to be an amazing manager going forward. And it's funny. It's a really strange thing, because I only spoke to her 2 weeks ago. I've not, seen her for a long time. But she actually said to me, the way that she manages her team was the way I used to manage her.
ah,
Which is, for me, it's always great to hear things like that. So there's always a good way, I think, and a bad way to manage, and sometimes it's a thin line.
that's beautiful, Mike. Telling her, I trust you to do it right. It's so powerful, because I have quite a few clients who come to me and will say that they're in the new job, they're doing really well.
Mm,
And then they're still feeling this imposter syndrome
yeah,
because of a previous toxic boss. I mean, who had
yeah.
just kind of ripped them apart. And it's so, how can leaders be cognizant that in the moment, right? I loved what you shared, that I
Mm,
trust you. I know you will get it right. Let's focus on turning the situation, making sure that
mhm,
we can fix it, and then we will talk about it later. So,
yeah.
taking that pressure away from her. How can leaders be cognizant of that, of their influence?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually, because, leaders, they're all different.
Yeah.
Some of them are working under extreme pressure. They have to deliver results themselves, and maybe that's the only thing that they're focused on. But I think in order to be really cognizant, you've got to, if you're managing a team, right, and not everybody is geared up or set up to be a leader of people.
Hmm.
People that move into senior positions sometimes get there for different reasons, like their own individual ability as a high performer, and moving into management might have been the next logical step in their career. But that doesn't make you or give you the ability or capabilities to then all of a sudden start managing people, real people who have real lives, who have real feelings and emotions. So there needs to be an element of really training and learning to develop those skills, first and foremost, as a leader. And if you can begin to do that and begin to have that level of empathy that I've mentioned, the emotional intelligence, and also cultural intelligence plays a significant part as well as kind of having as a leader that self-awareness of their selves in terms of thinking about what they say and when they say things and how they say it to individuals. I think they have to be aware of how they're making people feel when they're talking to someone. And if they're trying to throw somebody under a bus or really giving them a good telling off, I would reflect on that. I would think, they need to think, okay, what good did that do? Did that really help the situation? It might have solved the immediate problem, but what does it do long term? Not just for the individual, but for them as leaders. Will they have respect as a leader? Will people trust them as a leader? So it works in both directions. If leaders are not trusted or respected, they're going to fail themselves. So you have to really build this level of trust, teamwork, collaboration when you're managing a team. But the trust factor is the most important, because it will make people in your team feel that they can do things, they can make mistakes, and not be punished for it. Allow them to be a little bit more autonomous in their working. If they don't have that, then it's very difficult to manage any team anywhere.
Yeah, very true, very true. And it's having that emotional intelligence along with a lot of self-awareness. So you mentioned a couple of really good things that which kind of brings me to succession planning, as you mentioned about, like, training those leaders. Just because somebody has done a good performance, and that's the case, like, there are high performers, natural progression is you become manager to, the whole trajectory up to C-suite. But
Mm.
then where is the training? So as the companies are planning about succession planning, do you have one of the experiences to share where it was done in a very good way, that you were building not only top down,
Mm.
but
Yeah,
as where you're having, like, good leader after good leader after good leader.
I saw that most when I was at HP, coming off the accelerated development program. They had really great training programs for developing people.
Mm,
It was the culture of the company.
mm,
But I have worked in many other companies where you do not always see that level of management training. When someone becomes a manager, they're more focused on the business, they're more focused on the revenues and the costs and all of
mhm,
those drivers, but they're not really focused on what's known as the softer skills in terms of actually, leading people and managing people in the right way. It's almost like they're expected that that's a given. They know how to do this stuff and they'll get on and do it. And I think that's where a lot of organizations, unfortunately, do fall down, because that level of expectation that they can do the job is where the big mistakes are being made. So there
yeah.
needs to be a level of effort just to encourage managers as well, and they need help. They, a lot of them do need help. You can't blame them if they're not being given the right level of coaching and training along the way to become better managers, and putting them under pressure with, tight deadlines and targets and all of those things certainly doesn't help as well, because what it does is it drives a particular type of behavior in individuals, and if you're being rewarded for achieving financial targets, the place that you're going to focus is on those financial targets and hitting those numbers. You're not going to worry about anything else.
Yeah.
So that's what the challenge is there.
And so given, let's say you have brought a very realistic problem, that the focus is on results, the focus is on the bottom line. So given that there may be companies who are startup and they may not have the budgets, on one hand, they're getting ready to lay off people. So given all the difficult circumstances, what's the minimal any organization or the top leader could do that could help the middle to senior managers lead the way?
First of all is trust. You have to trust that if you've got a set of middle managers that you've charged to help drive the business, you've got to understand where they are in their journeys. What are their strengths? What do they need to focus on to maximize their overall potential as leaders? And I think that's important. And, sometimes that could be as significant as sending them off to business school, or it could be, just running some facilitated workshops to tackle, specific topics, for example. But it's ensuring that there is that awareness and that level of education and training that is applied, rather than a blanket, hey, we're going to do this training and it's going to apply to everybody. It may not be required by everybody. So you've really got to get into where you're having those performance and discussions and evaluations with those managers. That is a point to understand, right, from a development perspective, where can we maximize? Where can we help you? What do you need to strengthen your skills? Rather than just talking about the performance objectives, you've got to talk about their development objectives as well, and ensuring that, you are investing in them as individuals. I came through my careers with so many companies that had a policy of saying people are our most important asset. Right. And you didn't always see that play out in an organization, unfortunately. But if people are the most important asset of a company, these are some of the basic things that you need to be doing.
Yes, absolutely. And just to throw another wrench in that saying is that before people would say that, right? People are, at least there would be the optics of people are assets. And now I've seen a lot of CEOs, because following artificial intelligence so closely, that, and that's one of the reasons I'm writing that book. Like, so many CEOs are just coming out and saying that they're actually being very clear and open about how they're optimizing. And I'm all for optimizing and bringing efficiency in by reducing the numbers of people. So that's been a little, I don't know, for myself, like, I'm a person like, to take people first, a little alarming. And so now the key is, like, we are coming back to, like, full circle to the individual, like, things are changing. And the key is that sometimes a lot of professionals get professional dollars, or sometimes it may be worth investing stuff in themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think self-investment is important. I mentioned earlier on that continuous learning is key. I don't think any employee should always expect that the company should be the organization that gives them the training that they need. Sometimes you need to figure out for yourself, what do I need? And if it's something that the company can't provide, then you've got to work out, I need to invest in myself if I want to get from A to B, if I want to accelerate my career with whatever ambition it is that I have, or whatever skill it is I want to get. So self-investment is really important, for sure. And whether that comes in the way of training, having a coach or a mentor, you've got to figure out, right, it's important enough for me to want to pay for it myself, because, hey, the return on investment might be fivefold or tenfold going forward. Most people, when they think about self-investment, the first thing they look at is the cost.
Yeah.
They're not really looking at the outcome and what that can bring you, and what then the return on investment is. They look initially at what the initial outlay is, right? And sometimes it can be a little bit restrictive for people. But if you look at, well, what will the real outcomes be, and how will I benefit from that? Then they may realize that, wow, this could be a significant investment, a worthwhile investment to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have given some very powerful nuggets, for people to implement in their lives. And I'm sure, some of our listeners are thinking like, okay, how can I contact Mike? Where can I connect with him? Any
Yeah.
books? So, and what kind of coaching do you provide? So would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So I've written 3 books. 2 of the most relevant ones to the conversation we have had. One of them is called Leadership in Action. It's a handbook, really, but it provides 50 hacks that you can do as a leader to increase your overall experience and your inclusive leadership skills going forward. The other book is called Mindset Unlocked. This is the one that helps people who have all of these self-doubt, self-limiting beliefs. It talks about having a growth mindset and becoming a lot more positive. And it's filled with some case studies. It's filled with some of my own personal experiences, like the one I mentioned earlier on. But some of the case studies are really important, both with companies and with individuals. I've got, people like Maya Angelou and Serena Williams and Albert Einstein, who have all said that they have suffered from imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So it's a great book to actually read. And at the final chapter, I give 10 essential tips for achieving and maintaining a growth mindset. These books are available on Amazon. But in addition to that, as I mentioned, I do coaching and also some leadership training as well. You can reach me out on my LinkedIn profile or my website, which hopefully you'll show what that is. But yeah, I don't mind anybody reaching out to me on LinkedIn and connecting, and if they want help or advice, or just want to learn more about my services and what I do, I can always set up a discovery call and spend time talking to an individual about what I can do and figuring out whether I can actually help them. Because I'm not saying I can always help every individual, but for this type of thing, I'm pretty sure I can. So yeah.
Absolutely. And would you be open to spelling out your website?
Yeah. The website is www.zinc, which is spelled X-INC.global, GLOBAL, and that's it. Yeah, there it is across the ticker right there now. So yeah.
So any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a great conversation, and as I'd love to say to your listeners, look, if you ever do have these feelings of imposter syndrome or you're lacking in confidence, first and foremost, you are not alone. There are so many people who are in the same situation as you. But don't be too hard on yourself. These are things that you can overcome quite comfortably, whether that's with help, whether that's reading a book, whether that's talking to friends and people that you trust. But really take time to kind of reflect on what you can do and where you're stuck and how you can get out of it. It's never always that bad. There's always a solution, is what I would say. So yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Mike. And we wish you all the best in your next endeavors. Thank you, listeners, for being part
Thank
of
you
the
so much.
show, because you are the life and blood of this. We appreciate you, and let us know how we can serve and support you. Thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. I will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.